Welcome to the American Academy of Grief Counseling's videogram on evolution and the purpose of sadness. And in this video, we're going to discuss the initial benefits of sadness in response to loss and how helpful it is in helping us in an evolutionary way exist and be able to continue to prosper at a high level because of our communication of sadness, and how sadness helps us to adjust and continue to survive as a species. So negative emotions hence have purpose. They're extremely important. They're not intrinsically evil in themselves. They are a reaction. And as a reaction, that there is a purpose to help us as a organism adjust and adapt to a change of some type. Just like anger is a helpful emotion when it comes to fight or flight, sadness has a purpose too. It helps us physically, emotionally, mentally, and also socially exhibit certain qualities that help us heal, that help us adjust, that help us communicate that we are in need itself. Now, again, these are initial responses that are positive. When these reactions prolong and exist and do not go away, then obviously they can have negative consequences on our physical, mental health, and also our social health in regards to us withdrawing through prolonged grief or depression. But initially, negative emotions are very important in our evolutionary advance and change as a species for purposes of, believe it or not, survival in its very nature itself. And this was especially the case with prehistoric humanity. Well before civilization set in, sadness was extremely important for survival. Evolution had put in this emotion to help us not only physically adjust to change, but to help us survive in a very savage world itself. So individuals who felt the fatigue from sadness or the mental exhaustion from the emotion of sadness would then retreat in some ways from active life. They would withdraw, which most of us do when we are sad or grieving. And in prehistoric times, this was very essential, because if your mind wasn't on top of everything, if you weren't completely alert and ready, you could very easily be injured or hurt or become prey to a large predator of some type. So it was important in that regard. And it was also important, the emotion itself, to exhibit to other individuals within the tribe or clan so that they understood that you needed help, that somehow you were not up to optimal functioning, so that they could intervene and work with you. And this is referred to as honest signaling. And it's just ourselves expressing through a frown what we're feeling, and how through evolution, we communicate that to other individuals in a social setting for the overall benefit. Furthermore, the type of inability to be stronger, at least in the prehistoric world, was extremely important for leadership. And those who were unable to have a healthy mind could not lead. And today, we look at individuals in the modern world who have these types of problems. We don't see it as a weakness. We see it as something that needs to be rectified through counseling and therapy. But in the prehistoric world, there wasn't those things. So an individual who wasn't mentally there, mentally healthy, and they exhibited these signs of depression and sadness, for the benefit of the entire group, it was important that only the mentally strong, the mentally there, will do leadership functions and so forth. So sadness have its benefits for purposes of survival in the prehistoric world. Now, naturally, whenever negative stimuli presents itself, human beings like to avoid anything that's negative, an emotional thing, an emotional feeling, or it could be a physical feeling. It could be something that doesn't taste good or something that's hot or cold. It's a negative stimuli and we react to that. And that's what we refer to as the psychic pain hypothesis. And it states that individuals with any type of negative stimuli, pain or so forth, or grieving, mental pain, will avoid the stimuli causing it. Now, this type of avoidance initially is good because it gives the mind and it gives the body time to heal itself. But over a prolonged period of time, this type of avoidance doesn't allow the mind to rectify the issue at hand. It doesn't give the mind the ability to focus on what was the problem and how to adjust and to again re-enter into society, to re-enter into normal functioning the way we should. So initially, again, this function of sadness to avoid emotional negative stimuli is good. But after a day or so, after the mind has its time to accept and heal, then it can become a problem if it prevents us from fulfilling what we need to do. And this is where the other model comes into play, the behavioral shutdown model, where individuals are very much based on a very primitive concept of risk and reward. And what is the reward and risk if I engage in this type of cognitive thought process about my loss? So again, just with negative stimuli, the initial risk reward isn't very high. Causes anguish, it causes pain to reflect on the grief, the sadness, the loss. But over time, again, that can become something that is not good. So what is programmed in our DNA for evolutionary purposes, for survival, to retreat from the issue, to heal, to be on our top game, initially is good, but over time, it prevents us from reaching a conclusion, finding a solution to the actual issue itself. What sadness does, though, as we get past the initial negative shock, is it helps the brain to focus and think about the loss. It pushes it. So a normal grief reaction is going to, after the initial breakdown, start to reflect on it. And it's going to be sad. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's going to help us become a little bit sharper in regards to that. So analytical rumination hypothesis looks at how the mind will utilize grief and sadness to overcome a particular issue. Now, again, just like anything, when it's in play in its proper usage, it's good. Initially, the shock, and then afterwards, you start to think about it. The sadness helps you reflect upon it. But over time, after this phase, overthinking, over analysis can also become harmful. So it's a very thin line. But when we have this sharper mind during grieving on the particular loss, we become more empathetic as well to others and also to the type of loss that we're dealing with. So again, it's all been programmed within our DNA to utilize sadness, and sadness begins to ignite within our mental processes the ability to focus on the loss and to adjust to the loss itself. For the most part, though, it is a call for help. Sometimes we can't all just deal with loss on our own. So honest signaling, again, I mentioned that a couple slides back, helps individuals know that we are sad by the fact that we have a frown, or the fact that we have tears, or the fact that we're not as socially engaged as we usually are, through a withdrawal of some type. So this communicates to other individuals, and this was good in prehistoric times, but it's good now too in the modern world. It communicates to individuals that we need some sort of emotional assistance within the unit, the family unit, the work unit, whatever type of unit you're involved in. It helps other individuals, family members, team members to see that something is not right with you. And other individuals also see benefit in that with the bargaining theory, where individuals will see their benefit in making sure that you are also at a optimal level. So sometimes it's out of love, sometimes it's out of self-preservation. In prehistoric times, it obviously was self-preservation. If you think about it in the workforce, it's for the good of the company and the good of the goals being met to have you at your optimal level. And within family, obviously, you still have certain duties, but it's more out of love and concern for your own self. So in essence, sadness is something that's very important. It's built in to us to go through certain phases, certain reactions, to ignite within us certain reactions to help us overcome grief, to adjust to loss, and to, in a safe way, make it back into the regular stream of life itself. But this can take time, and it's a very fine line as well between it lasting too long, these natural helpers, in regards to creating more of a prolonged grief or a depression, and being beneficial, which is what its natural evolutionary purpose is to do. So there is a purpose to sadness. There is a purpose to tears. There is a purpose to our frowns. It's to help us adjust to the loss itself. And in that way, negative emotions aren't necessarily intrinsically evil in themselves, but they are in fact quite helpful. If you would like to learn more about sadness, about grief, how individuals process grief itself, and to help individuals go through it, please review the American Academy of Grief Counseling and our grief counseling certification, which we offer. It's a 4-year certification that you can earn. You take 4 online courses, and after completing those 4 online courses, qualified professionals can then earn that 4-year certification itself. We have a link right below that you can click and review. You can also call our office at 330-652-7776. You can also email us at info@aihcp.org. So I hope today's video begins to maybe start to illuminate the importance of sadness and the grieving process. So many individuals want to avoid, with that negative stimuli, they want to avoid grief. And initially, that's a good thing. That's a good thing initially because it allows you to heal just that little bit. That's actually a function of grief. But the tending notion is that the grieving process is a bad thing. Well, a bad thing did occur, but the process itself is a natural thing. The process itself is a healthy thing, helping the body, again, find some semblance of balance and an ability to continue to function. All things that were set into play through evolution itself and our very own DNA. So I would like to thank you for listening and have a good day.